Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my wonderful co hosts, we like to review films, either current or classic, on this podcast. And this week, we are bringing a very current film at you. That, of course, being Finch, the new film from Apple Films, starring Tom Hanks, along with a robot and a good puppo. We got a lot to talk about with this movie. But before we do that, we want to do a couple of things here. First, I want to introduce you to those co-hosts I mentioned. Jim Poliafco is here with us in the virtual studio. Hey, babe, how are you?
I'm doing great, babe. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm happy to be here with you and our other co-host today to talk about this movie. I think it's going to be fun.
All right, excellent. And speaking of other co-hosts, Will Lindis is here. Welcome, Will. How's it going?
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. It's going great. You don't know how much I had to resist the urge to do that obnoxious robot voice we were doing in the pre-show in this intro. Don't worry, anyone listening right now, the obnoxious robot voice will indeed happen at some point. Just wait for it. Mark your calendars. Time today. Obnoxious robot voice is coming.
I'm sure there will be lots of it soon.
I am ready for this podcast review, Brad and Jim. There we go. See, it happened right away. We
Jim, are
Yes.
you ready
Yes.
to podcast, Jim?
Yes, of course I'm ready. Let me adjust your circuits.
To make you less annoying.
Clank, clank.
Well, listen, we would be remiss if we did not do something before we jump into our movie review for this week. Mr. Lindis, something momentous happened to you during your Disney vacation. Congratulations on you and your other half getting engaged. How exciting is that? How do you feel?
Yeah, it's great. It was our 10-year anniversary. We'd been dating for 10 years. We took a trip to Disneyland, and there in front of the Millennium Falcon, he proposed. I said yes. We have photos of me with Star Wars and Batu and just all of that all around me, which is absolutely fitting for the type of people that we are. So we're excited. Now, will it be another 10 years before we actually get married? Who knows? We were not the fastest at getting from dating to engaged, but we're going to be. I think we'll be faster in this next stage. Who knows? Maybe it'll be in front of the Millennium Falcon too.
Yeah,
it blows. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just gonna say, congratulations from me as well. It looked like an amazing trip, and it was. I mean, we knew about that the trip was coming, but we knew nothing about the engagement. So like total surprise to us, and we were so happy and to be able to do it in that place, which we haven't been to yet, but we hear is spectacular. That's another thing we want to do is hear about your trip at some point. But it looked really special and memorable.
We could do a whole separate show just on like how amazing the Star Wars section of Disney is.
Yeah. That's great. Well, it blows my mind, Will, that you and Scott have been together for 10 years. That's just insane how quickly the time passes. But very, very happy for you guys. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. An interesting bit of trivia. Scott and I met, even though we started dating in November, because it's the November episode. We met on August 29th of 2011. And do you know who else I met on August 29th of 2011?
Gosh, was it during that Bat Fest thing that Nakia had going on?
That just came up the other day when we were talking about it.
Absolutely. It was the same night that the three of us on this show, Brad, Jim, and Will, you just heard us in the theme song 2.5 minutes ago, all met as well. So it was a good night for me.
That's fantastic. Well, we're very lucky that we all were able to meet that night, and love that you and Wiggles are still together after so long. Phenomenal. All right.
This ring.
A fateful night, a fateful date.
Jim, I see cat ears.
Yeah, you do.
Your podcasting buddy's back, huh?
Yeah, he is. He's on my desk.
Is he going to look at the camera?
Yeah, he's actually looking at over my shoulder, there's an Arlo. I don't know if you can see him. He's like right over
Yeah.
here, right? The eyes on Arlo have him totally spooked. So like he comes over here and he looks and he's like, oh shit, is that thing gonna attack me or what? What's gonna happen? So he's very he's scoping out Arlo and making sure there's no sudden movements over there.
He's protecting you, Jim, from your
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah, he's not quite sure what to make of it. And I think it's just the eyes, because Arlo's got these huge eyes. So yeah, he's just, for some reason, I mean, he's been here 6 months or whatever 4 months, 5 months, and he's just now noticing Arlo. And Arlo's been there the whole time.
So this means that for Halloween next year, you need to go as Arlo, and you need to get like a little like loincloth outfit for the cat, just so that you can be Arlo and
Spot.
Spot from The Good Dinosaur. That
There you go.
Couple's costume for you and your cat? Question mark.
Maybe.
That's a thing I hear. That's the thing. Well, speaking of the strong bond between people and animals, there's certainly something to be said for that in the movie that we're going to be discussing this week. We are talking Finch, the new Apple film starring Tom Hanks and a really, really cute dog. And then there's a robot, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. Well, yeah. Let's just say a cadre of robots.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
There
we go. There we go.
that.
That fits. So, for those of you who have not yet seen Finch, and no wonder if you haven't, it is behind a paywall. We do know that you have to be part of the Apple TV Plus service in order to watch this film. So, not everybody may have access to it yet. But a few people have reached out to ask our thoughts on whether it's worth maybe doing like a free trial or signing up for the first month to watch this movie. So, Jim, Will, while we're talking about our thoughts on this film, maybe you can add that additional flavor of whether you think this is worth maybe jumping onto Apple TV Plus to check it on out. But we're going to review the film spoiler-free for probably the first 10 or 15 minutes. If you are on the fence, if you are wondering if it's worth checking out, we'll certainly give you our thoughts about that as we go. And then we'll give you a big-time spoiler warning before we jump into the big meaty part of our review, which will be, of course, full of spoilers. Jim, Will, are you ready to get this mother rolling?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Let's get out of the sun and do this.
All right. Well, that said, here goes our review of Finch. Jim, if you don't mind introducing the film, Jim, that would be fantastic.
Sure.
Tell us your thoughts. Was this a good film? Is this worth maybe hopping onto a free trial for Apple Plus or something to check out? What do you think?
Well, I'll start with the IMDb description or synopsis, non-spoilery synopsis of this film. And here we go. On a post-apocalyptic Earth, a robot built to protect the life of his creator's beloved dog learns about life, love, and friendship, and what it means to be human, even though he's a robot. Or even though it's a robot, I should say at this point, right? This movie stars Tom Hanks. It's pretty much, as far as human actors go, and this is not really a spoiler, there's a couple other human actors listed for voice work and some really, really tiny bit parts. But this is really a full-on Tom Hanks post-apocalyptic survivor kind of movie. And if that sounds familiar, like Castaway or something, it might kind of bring to mind some of those things, like Castaway, or what was the movie with Matt Damon about Mars?
The Martian.
The Martian.
Several years ago. It seems like we've gotten a lot of post-apocalyptic movies in the last couple of years too, right? Since and I don't know if that it's correlated to the pandemic that we've gone through, just kind of that feeling that everybody has of being isolated, tied in with the effects of global warming and environmental change. But we've got a lot of these post-apocalyptic movies. And Tom Hanks is pretty good in this one. This one's directed by Miguel Sapochnik. And we know Miguel Sapochnik from anybody who's watched Game of Thrones would know Miguel Sapochnik. He's also, by the way, directed this movie kind of in between Game of Thrones and his next big directing thing, which is going to be was it Game of Dragons or something?
The House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon, right. And, we've seen him do, he's done some True Detective. He's done Falling Skies, babe. Do you remember watching Falling Skies?
For like 5 minutes.
For five episodes. He was behind that one. So this one here, I'm just going to give my impressions of it. So you have Tom Hanks. He's trying to survive in this. The Earth has been ravaged by some environmental catastrophe, or environmental, just the way things have kind of evolved and events that have led to an apocalypse. He's got a robot. He's got actually. It's not a spoiler to probably say 2 robots, and he's got a dog that he's gathered along the way. And this is kind of think of this as kind of a apocalyptic road movie. They're traveling around together, surviving, trying to do their thing. I got to say that this movie was much less than I thought it was going to be. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people who this may be like right up their alley, and they may really, really dig this stuff. But I got to say, for me, it didn't really do much for me. And maybe because I've seen a lot of these types of movies. I've seen this, human trying to teach a robot, how to be more human-like. He's developed this robot to take care of this dog that he loves. And that's the robot's job. So along the way, he's got to teach the robot everything about how to communicate, how to just take care of the dog, how to take care of itself, how to survive. And the robot, of course, does talk, as you heard Brad and Will imitate a little bit earlier. I can't say for me that this movie would have been something that I would have said, yeah, go out and do a free trial. You know why? Because I know how these free trials work. We get these free trials, and then we get them for a month or 2 months or whatever it is, and then we never cancel, right? Or we can't figure out how to cancel, or they make it difficult to cancel, and you end up paying for it anyway. But if you don't already have Apple TV Plus, I would say this is not the film necessarily that you would get it for. There's plenty of other content, I believe, though, on Apple TV Plus that is worth the price of that streaming service. And I can mention some of those later in plugs, but for me, this just isn't one of them. The script here is really derivative of other properties that we've seen. It feels so familiar and honestly a little bit bland. And also a lot of this movie just didn't make sense. Like I didn't. You're in this apocalyptic world. Usually there's rules, and some of the rules are described here, but there's a lot of stuff that just isn't mentioned. Like, how are things powered? How are they making water? How are they, being able to survive? And many of that stuff either is just not mentioned, is not apparent, or just doesn't make sense. So for me, this is a pass. It's a bit of a disappointment to say that, because I do like Tom Hanks, and I think he's fine in this as the main character, Finch, obviously. Just not. This would never caught on for me. This is too too much in the script that's either derivative or bland, just boring. So, yeah, not for me.
Derivative, bland, or just boring. There's the
Yeah.
quote on the poster from Jim
Hold up.
Africa.
Yeah.
Let me get on Photoshop real quick.
Yeah. Put that in quotes. Put that in quotes.
So Hammy in chat clarifies. He says, by the way, hey Hammy, good to see you. He says a solar flare had destroyed the ozone layer, but then he qualifies that by saying, in the movie, not just now in real life. So Hammy, thank you for making that clear, because I was a little worried for a second.
We were looking out the window, looking up, just like, well, I mean, is the last thing that we do on this earth talk about Finch? Because I don't want that to be it, right? Like,
Yeah.
how did you spend
I
your
don't
last
know.
few minutes? I guess this movie.
Yeah, it seemed like if the movie had explored that a little bit, maybe I would have been more interested. If it had explored that phenomenon. And I mean, we see the visible effects of this solar flare destroying the ozone and then wiping out a lot of the life on Earth. But what about the life that's left? We know there's some left. He's left. I'm not going to spoil anything else, but I'll just say I wish they had maybe gone into that a little bit.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. So you would definitely not recommend this. It sounds like
I can't.
okay.
I can't recommend it. There may be some folks who, and I feel bad because I think maybe there's some folks who really dig this. It's not. It's just not. It's not my cup of tea.
All right. Will, how about for you? Similar feelings, or did you come away with something different?
I think I landed a little more positively, although this is not the type of film that I'm going to like go to bat for at the end of the year type thing, right? Like this was a perfectly serviceable film that accomplished what it set out to do. No more, no less. For what it's worth, that's an okay thing when you're looking for something to watch, just around the house. And if you already have an Apple TV Plus subscription, and you're looking for something to watch, sure, put on. I think you'll have a good enough time, assuming in the right headspace for this movie, which is a fair disclaimer for literally any movie, right? But I would also say that I don't think that this movie is strong enough on its own merits to warrant going out. And if you're not currently a subscriber, this isn't like the killer app. This isn't that killer program that would make you subscribe to it. Like if you haven't already subscribed for Ted Lasso, you're not going to subscribe just to watch Finch. In terms of what I liked about it, I mean, this is essentially a one-hander. We've seen, again, the obvious comparison is Tom Hanks in Castaway. While there's other characters on screen, it's mostly Tom Hanks just like putting on a masterclass. This movie is very similar in that regard, only he has a surrogate character in Jeff the Robot to bounce off of, voiced by Caleb Landry Jones, who I'll say also does a really good job. I think the performances are solid. I think the look of this film is pretty good as well. Joe Williams is the cinematographer, who I think Joe in addition to some other films, cut their teeth on like the Hunger Games movies, like the Mockingjay and Catching Fire, but recently did His House, which was an incredibly well shot film, and I got to see some of that here. This was a movie that was supposed to look bleak but also inspirational in times, and I think the camera work really captured that when it was supposed to. I think also the score by Gustavo Santaolalla. This is the guy that did, he was music department for Brokeback Mountain. He did stuff for Wild Tales and Babel, really good with like kind of the guitar style work. And I think all of that created a good mood here. The director here, Miguel Sapochnik, you mentioned Game of Thrones. This is the guy that did the Battle of Bastards. Like this is that episode that like won himself an Emmy. All of the ingredients are here, right? But the one ingredient that isn't here is the writing. And I think that's where, like, I've always been one of those guys who's like, I really like to look at the whole picture of what the film is and what it's trying to accomplish, right? Some movies can get away with stronger performances and weaker writing if it's a performance-driven film. I think the writing is supposed to be a big part of this film. The two writers on this, Craig Luck and Ivor Powell, they've both done a lot of things, but never in the writing department. In fact, Powell dude was like the producer on Blade Runner and Alien, and Craig Luck, he's been in like camera and electrical department for a bunch of films. This is the first movie that either of them has written. They co-wrote it here, and it felt, to Jim's point, a little derivative, right? Like, we've seen some of these beats before, and there wasn't enough new to really, really make it soar. And if anything, I think the bigger sin that this film has is, I think, some of the character beats. It's like there's this thing where you need to have a specific character beat for a specific scene, right? And then it's the writer's job to figure out how to make the arcs get the characters to the point where it's believable by the time those scenes happen, right? And I didn't feel that here. I felt like each of the characters was in this movie felt the way they were supposed to in the scene, but I never really understood how and why they got there organically. It was almost like it was that way because the script needed it to be that way. That's coming down a little hard on it. This isn't like the worst written film I've ever seen. It just, the writing really let down a score, some camera work, and some performances that I think deserved better. So yeah, it's a soft recommend for me. I think people will enjoy this. Yeah, Hammy's saying, I think the script for Finch was a blacklist screenplay for what that's worth. I don't disagree. I would imagine there's a lot of these films that go through the blacklist and they make it to like they get passed around and everyone's just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the next big thing. But the way that script gets kind of finally chopped down and put to put to screen, I don't know. There's something that got lost in translation there, right?
It could be that like all the interesting, like the sharp edges that make it kind of unique got rounded down into this very generic thing, that didn't have any spark to it.
Yeah, it's just I've seen this film so many times before. And again, this isn't bad. This is good. Soft recommend. But I just, especially as we get to the ending of this movie, no spoilers, but like the ending of this movie just really like happens, and like I didn't feel like I should have like been welled up with tears. I should have been like gut punched by like what this film does and how it gets the characters there, and it didn't. And that's a disappointing when the movie wants me to feel a thing I'm not feeling. I feel like I'm standing at the bus stop holding my ticket, and the bus is already like blocks away. Like I missed something. Maybe that's on me, maybe it's not. But anyways, soft recommend. There's still some things of value in here. Not a bad film at all, but again, not one that I would go to bat for.
All right. So a do not pass go to watch this movie person and a soft recommend person. I have to agree with both of you in the sense that this movie is a little bit of a struggle, especially at the beginning. Setting the stage, post-apocalyptic world. I just don't know how much more juice you can squeeze out of settings like this. Between The Walking Dead and so many other things we've seen that are in a post-apocalyptic world. Like, oh, we're scavenging. Oh, we're having to be really careful about going outside. We have to avoid other people because they're the enemy. They're the danger. It's really tired at this point. So I definitely get where both of you are coming from with maybe not being kind of bought into the world or maybe not caring that much. I would say I agree with you there. I would disagree, though, at least for me personally, that the things that happen in the latter part of this film are not earned, and that they're not affecting. For me, they were. I cried multiple times during this movie. We can talk about some of that when we get into spoilers. I don't know if that makes me a simpleton when it comes to films or what, but I mean, what the movie was trying to do, I think, worked on me. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm a glitch in the matrix. I'm not sure, but I did appreciate some of what this film was trying to do. So I would say I come down even more positively on this film than Will did. By no means do I think this is the greatest film ever. Nor would I say that this is the one, end all be all thing that should get you to check out Apple TV Plus. I also agree. There's a lot of other great content, some other great films. Ted Lasso, I mean, slam dunk, no question. If you were thinking about getting an Apple TV free trial or subscription, maybe do that for Ted Lasso if you haven't seen it yet, and then like watch this movie, while you have that free trial. I think that might be worth it. But yeah, this is definitely a recommend for me, especially on weeks like this one that we just had, where there wasn't really a lot that was coming out that was, I don't know, getting a lot of people excited to watch stuff. This is a perfectly fine movie to enjoy. But then again, you got to like things like robots and dogs and Tom Hanks. If those pieces of the recipe don't trip your trigger, then the finished meal probably isn't going to either. Hemi says, to Finch's credit, this is the only hopeful post-apocalyptic movie
that's a mouthful
he can think of.
Yeah, I think there are others. I'm not good at like coming up with these, but there are those movies that have that moment where everything's dire, everything is dead. It's hopeless despair, and then there's the flower growing out of the ground. You know what I mean? Like that's a trope we've seen 1,000 times, and I know I could probably do some research and find those movies, but I know I've seen that before. So wasn't really new to me. This is hopeful in that. Well, we'll get into spoilers, but see how hopeful it is. Yeah,
I'd throw maybe you have things like WALL-E. I'd put in that mix, and there was a big stretch sort of in the early '90s. I feel where we started to see these a post-apocalyptic blockbusters where characters had to go to the one good place on Earth, and that's where they would start the new society, like Waterworld, or hell, The Land Before Time, which is not really post-apocalyptic, but sort of pre-apocalyptic. But I don't know. I feel but I think to that point, there is a new aesthetic of post-apocalyptic movies that is person wandering through the wastelands, a la The Road. The Road is a good example of one that this movie feels very similar to. But whereas that one is bleak as fuck, this one does have moments of brightness and levity, and I think there is something to that. There is something to be said there.
Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that in spoilers, because there's things I want to say about the hopefulness of this film and where it's going with regard to that. One of the things is this movie relies on us to and empathize with the robot character and whatnot. I'm going to say there's two robot characters in this film, and I think I got behind the wrong. I think I got behind the wrong robot in this movie. But we'll talk about that a little bit in spoilers also. Yeah.
Well, is there anything left to say before we go into our spoiler section?
Yeah. I think the one other thing that's worth noting is there is a certain audience that I do fall into that I think will appreciate parts of this movie. There's a big, significant plot point in this film that has to do with the affection that we have for dogs. And if you are a dog person, not in that I'm half canine, half human, but in that I love dogs, like me, if that's who you are, you'll appreciate that from this movie. I love seeing a good doggo in a movie. I love seeing a good doggo who is an important part of a movie. And I mean, Jim, from the Fantastic Fest tropes, you also know there's been a recent trend in not letting the dog survive movies as often.
Yes.
So it's just any time where I can see a good doggo, just a good doggo, just being happy on screen, even if it's short lived, it's good for me as a dog owner. Right. So I think there are people that will appreciate that out of Finch as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I thought the dog in this one was great. Was right up there with Tom Hanks, if you ask me, in terms of character appreciation. I did like the dog.
Well, it's good that it definitely had something that was a little bit redeeming for you, babe.
And the other robot.
how you felt about the rest of the film.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take things into spoiler territory at this point. We're done dancing around topics. We need to address them head on. If you have not yet seen Finch and you value your virginal innocence where the plot of the film is concerned, this is your opportunity. Step away for about the next 20 minutes, then come on back for some plugs toward the end of the show. You're not going to want to miss those things. But spoilers are officially fair game. Where do you guys want to start?
I'm going to start with the ending. So at the end of the film, unfortunately, Finch's character succumbs to whatever illness he has, whether it's he has some kind of lung cancer or some other affliction. But throughout the film, I think from very, very early on, it's apparent that he's going to die in this movie. It's pretty clear because he's coughing up blood for half of the movie, and I think that maybe the way that was handled, I think maybe robbed it of its sentiment, its emotional gut punch for me. There's a moment in this movie where the other robot that's not talked about, I think it was called Dewey.
Yeah.
Dewey, right? Falls into a trap and gets killed or destroyed. That part got to me more than anything else in this film. And we didn't spend a lot of time with that character. That character couldn't talk, but it could emote to some degree. And I thought that was, I don't know, maybe the talking robot thing is just maybe a little bit too much for me. But I did really emphasize with the Dewey character robot for a lot of reasons. One, he was kind of pushed to the background when this new creation came about that Finch was putting all his energy into. He didn't seem to have the same affinity or affection for Dewey that he had for Jeff. So I don't know. I don't know. It was just a weird movie for me. I just never clicked with the robot character at all, and I think that was key. For my enjoyment of it.
Well, ultimately, Dewey was a metaphor for the way human beings in this global climate right now. We've looked at things like old forms of power, like coal and nuclear power in the Dewey, but we've discarded them as we look towards this new and dangerous. I'm making shit up. There's no, yeah. As I said,
okay, well,
yeah. No, Dewey was a cool little robot who, I think that there's something about characters who don't talk, but who are given verbalizations, whether it be just like, R2-D2 squeaking and squawking and stuff like that, or just like we mentioned Wall-E, how he can be sort of like expressive with like his little eyes and stuff like that. Well, Dewey didn't have quite any of those like more humanistic features. There were a couple of moments where you identify Dewey as a character and not just as like a toaster, and so that makes it all the more painful when he unceremoniously gets like jumped out of the film. So I get where you're coming from.
Jim. And it was a cool throwback reference to another movie, an older movie with Bruce Dern called Silent Running, where the three little robots were Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I think it was a good homage, I think, to that film. By the way, if you haven't seen that movie Silent Running, that talks about it's another post-apocalyptic survivor story that has an environmental message, that has three amazing little robots in it. Check that one out. It's called Silent Running.
An interesting fact about kind of this story and why it's like, kind of going off of the, we talked a little bit about how this was a blacklisted script, which for anyone who doesn't know, like there's this like thing in sort of like Hollywood circles where they pass on something called the blacklist, which are the most liked unproduced scripts that exist out there. In past years, you've seen things like, Promising Young Woman, Queen and Slim, trying to think. Oh, Free Guy was one of those. I, Tonya. There's a few movies that you'd recognize. Some good, some bad, that go through there, because script is one thing, how it gets made on screen is a whole nother thing. This one's interesting though, because the director, apparently in the original script there was a whole different ending where at the end Jeff actually meets up with a whole cast of other humans and gets in with them, and then through interacting with them learns that they're nothing like Finch, and he has to sort of reconceptualize sort of like what it is to be human through all of that. I don't know if that would be good or not, because that's just the description of what was shot and cut and re-edited. But it certainly sounds interesting to me. They had Samira Wiley in that, who I absolutely love as an actress. Skeet Ulrich, like they shot this, like they had these people on, but they re-edited everything back to sort of like make this ending. I don't know. I wish I could see that cut of the film and see if I liked it a little bit better, because I've seen that story play out before too. But I've seen the one that did play out so many different times. I don't know. I'm just hungry for something different. So maybe this would be different enough.
This film didn't I may have misspoke. This film actually didn't attribute the catastrophe or the apocalypse to a human humans mistreatment of the earth at all, right? This is
a solar flare.
Yeah, this is like an act of act of creation. The sun had a solar flare and took out the Earth's ozone, and we were out of it. So yeah, the movie didn't. I don't know. It seems like another maybe like missed opportunity where, I think it would have been better if there was something about how, humankind's I know that wasn't this movie. This movie was about a robot trying to care for a dog and a dying guy. But again. Yeah.
To your point, though, there was a conversation. I mean, the robot asks about like what happened with the fall of humanity and everything, and Tom Hanks says, the solar flare started it, and we did the rest. And then he talks about how they were all against each other and not listening, and how some people tried to pretend it wasn't happening, and some people took it seriously. And so I think the movie at least tried to do some of that, babe. Maybe not as effectively as you'd maybe hope, but I give it some points for trying at least.
Yeah. Okay. It really wanted to like make the point of like, regardless of like what caused it, like the initial thing, where humans messed up pretty bad, was they had an opportunity to come together and figure out how to deal with these limited resources, and instead everyone just sort of like hoarded and cut off into like little groups and struck out against each other, and so again, to Brad's point, I give it the same points there. Like it wasn't an environmental movie, but it definitely has a fatalistic view of humanity. And I think that carries over to, I mean, literally the only human being that we meet in this movie is the Tom Hanks character, aside from like a flashback. And he's a good guy, but it's not that humanity is good. It's that Finch is a good guy.
Right.
And it's interesting as we get to the end, word spoilers, when it's just Jeff and it's just Goodyear the dog, sort of on the Golden Gate Bridge, and they're looking at all of the different pictures and the messages, and they're like seeing these like moments of humanity, and sort of figuring like, all right, let's go find them. Maybe they're still there. I was left maybe a little colder than I should have been by that, because I didn't know what Jeff was supposed to think about humanity in that moment, because he had basically been told that everyone's pretty bad by Finch, and he didn't really have an opportunity like to really be proven like wrong. Or so I'm surprised that Jeff wanted to go reach them out as opposed to like, oh no, there are humans here. Oh shit, Goodyear, we should go elsewhere. I don't know. It's again, it was that same thing. It was like the character turns and motivations didn't always feel like they had as much cushioning to sort of like make sense to me, if that makes sense. Like I get the ending they were going for. I don't know that it 100% did all of the legwork it needed to get me there.
Yeah, I think the pictures and the letters that were up on the fence were supposed to evoke some similarity with the postcard that Jeff and Tom Hanks have been talking about the entire movie, and that ended up leading him to the Golden Gate Bridge. And so I think, this is just me, but I think those things Jeff equates to the postcard and sees them as a positive thing and a reason to, reach out to humanity. But I agree with you. It doesn't force feed you that, and it may, again, just be me picking up my own thing. But I do appreciate that, like, again, at least there was some breadcrumbs of a kind that were dropped as to why he would maybe seek out humanity. Because I had the same question. Like, throughout the whole movie, the message is other humans are bad. Although when Finch tells the story about the mom and the daughter and getting killed by the bad guy, it maybe introduces the idea that there are some good people out there too. I don't know, but
or that was just bad people on bad people. You know what I mean? Like it.
Maybe.
That the mother and daughter could have robbed him too.
They could have. It's very true. Hammy in the chat says being angry at his own invention because Tom Hanks needs to be sure Goodyear is taken care of when he's gone might be the most Tom Hanks thing in this movie.
Yeah. It's Tom Hanks is such an interesting actor in that I think there's a lot of people who could say that he's one of the best working actors of his age, right? Or of any age. I think, there's a lot of people, if you ask the average person, just, not someone from this slice of life or this, if you just say, who are your top 3 favorite actors? And then you pull up all the different people and then put them up on the board like Family Feud style. I think Tom Hanks makes a lot of people's lists more so than a lot of others. I think he's just a well-liked guy. And what's interesting about him is, as an actor, he doesn't always disappear into roles. There's a few exceptions, but there's a lot of times where we just get those Tom Hanks-isms on screen. And sure enough, like when he gets angry in this movie, it's like it's Tom Hanks channeling Tom Hanks anger for me. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. I love seeing him on screen, but there's moments where I'm like very aware I'm not watching Finch. I'm watching Tom Hanks.
Yeah, not a lot of chance for him to, he's probably at the stage of his career where he's not stretching his abilities at all. Like this, we know what we get from Tom Hanks, and that's exactly what you get in this movie. There's nothing new here that we haven't seen from Tom Hanks before.
I don't know. I mean, Tom Hanks with a coconut versus Tom Hanks with a robot. At least he got to interact more, with the robot. And I find myself really curious how they accomplished a lot that they did with the robot. Like, was it a mix of practical and CGI? Was it all CGI? Because if it was all CGI, man, I think Tom Hanks did brilliantly, like reacting to this thing that wasn't there, because I felt like the robot was physically there the entire time.
Something tells me there's a making of somewhere that probably explains it. It's probably on Apple TV Plus in the extras section, right?
Oh, there you go.
How they did that. And we just watched this last night, so really didn't have time to do that. But you're right, Brad. That would be interesting to see. The robot itself was rather interesting visually. I mean, it kind of a collection of parts, mechanical structure, and I kept asking myself, how does it work? Like, how is it powered? How, where is its brain? Where is its control system? And that's the engineer in me. Like, wait a minute, how does this robot work? And maybe I got too caught up in some of those nits about how this robot is supposed to work, and not just kind of go with the flow a little bit.
And I know a little bit of the answer to the special effects question, because I was curious the same thing. Because there's a moment in the movie where like Jeff puts on a jacket, and it made me think like, oh, I wonder if they did that to make it easier to do like practical stuff. And because of that, I was like, I did some digging, and this actually is like a lot of it is practical. They built this like sort of like special suit that Caleb Landry Jones would wear that had like a little mask and like some of the practical elements like the gloves and
The
all of that
hands,
stuff.
yeah.
And then they used like some like motion cap sensors that were inside of his suit, not like the ones that are like the little tracking balls on the outside, but ones that were sort of like tied inside, and used that to sort of motion track on the rest of the stuff. So Tom Hanks had an actual Caleb Landry Jones to act against, and some of those elements made onto screen, and then a lot of them were replaced visually later. Either way, I think it looked great. I think Jeff the Robot is one of the strongest things in this movie in terms of like how he looks. Like that's a really cool looking robot. It was human enough for me to empathize and to sort of like project onto him, but also not so human as to feel like silly or to feel scary or to feel like I'm so stuck in the uncanny valley that I can't get close enough to this character. This is very obviously a robot. It looked cool. I liked the head, the little like eyes. It was really cool.
And they did a good job with the physicality of the robot in terms of like how it moved and like physics, like when it would fall from a certain height or when it would like plop down in the passenger seat in the RV. You know, everything from the sound editing to the way that the camera shook, you know, when he would like make a hard impact. Like I felt like this was a real robot like walking around an RV, and that was pretty cool.
I've been fairly negative, on this movie, but I will give the movie credit in terms of how its treatment of the robot, in that, you know, I was kind of half expecting that there would be a moment where the robot like goes further off the rails and becomes like a threat to Finch or the dog. And there were little moments of that with the driving and stuff like that, like unintentional stuff. But I thought for sure, like, because at the beginning of the movie, it's like, okay, these are the things you need. These are your directives, right? And one of them was, robot shall never harm human or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I know what's coming, right? Is going to be a moment where the robot like somehow goes against the directive, develops like a will of its own and goes against that. But it never did. It never went into that kind of territory, which is good.
And they very well could have. So they took, what is it, the three laws of robotics from Asimov. Asimov, yeah, from like iRobot, and then they added the fourth directive of you must protect the dog, and this directive supersedes the previous ones. Yeah, there's a lot that they could have played with there. That said, I'm glad that they didn't, because I think that would be a very different movie. One of the things that really makes me feel more positive on this movie is to sort of, like, obviously it's about a robot, right? But if you take that element out and say, what is this movie really about? This is a movie about passing down legacy. And I think that we see that most often in this type of film. I've seen a lot of post-apocalyptic style films where it's an adult who's dying of the thing or who is whatever, and the kid that they're teaching to survive. If you think, you mentioned Walking Dead, Brad. I think specifically, and I don't know if you've ever played any of these, but they had the Telltale games from Walking Dead where you played and you had to protect Clementine at all, and you sort of taught her how to survive in this world that was harsh and inhospitable to her. And I got vibes of that more so than a lot of different things, because I felt like I was projecting through Finch. I was watching this childlike character of Jeff learn just all the steps he needed to do to take over the mantle of protector of dog once Finch passed. And that's where I came around on the movie. Like, I've seen that before. I've seen it a bunch of times with a kid. I don't know that I've seen it with a robot. I've seen several post-apocalyptics with robots. This is a little bit of like a putting your chocolate in my peanut butter style story. But, it's ultimately, it passes enough of the test for me to be like, in that, again, soft recommend stage. Like, I think there's some goodness here. And I think that this will definitely appeal to someone who's tired of very bleak post-apocalyptic films. There is enough levity and enough brightness and enough like warmth in this movie even when things are scary, that you're not going to walk away from this movie feeling like, gosh, I need a shower or I need a hug just to sort of get through the rest of my day.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I would say is, you know how there's that website, doesthedogdie.com or whatever, where you can like plug in a movie and see if the dog dies before you ever go watch the movie.
Yeah.
There needs to be a doestomhanksdie.com. Like, just plug in the title of a
Oh.
movie, to find out if Tom Hanks dies or not.
I also
Brad?
think there's a
Yeah.
is there a cat in this movie.com somewhere?
Is there a cat in this movie.com? Brad?
Yes, Will.
No. Why don't you be the future that you long for? Why don't you make that website? Why don't you make doestomhanksdie.com? Why don't you, it would take watching a lot of Tom Hanks movies and cross-referencing, but that'd be a fun project, Brad. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
I'd rather pay a developer to make it for me, but
Fair.
Well, fellas, any final thoughts on Finch before we jump into some plugs?
No, I like I said, I was feeling a little bad that I've been sort of negative on it. I just didn't click with me, but I know that this type of movie and the way this movie is put together is gonna, this movie it's not an awful movie. It has it definitely has its bright spots. I think just Will, you mentioned the writing. I think the writing just was a little too pat for me, too kind of middle of the road with nothing there. But I think a lot of people are going to like this movie enough, to maybe give it some legs on the streaming service on Apple TV Plus. So I would say that if you think that you kind of lean a little bit more towards Brad's sensibilities, then you may really love this movie.
Jim. Don't feel bad. Like Hammy's saying it here, but like you don't have to sugarcoat it.
Well,
if like your takeaway was like, man, that was a waste of 2 fucking hours. I really didn't like that. Like, you owe no apology to us or to anyone. If you walked out of this saying that was the best movie you ever saw, or if it was the worst, or literally anywhere in between.
It's not the worst movie I ever saw. How's that?
Yeah.
Let's put that on the poster.
Put that on the poster. Not the worst movie I ever saw. William, ... It had a dog in it. Brad, Tom Hanks dies in it. Sorry,
dog
spoiler.
Lives. The dog lives.
Oh boy. All right. Well, let's move on into some plugs, the part of the show where we like to put things on your radar that have tripped our collective triggers. Let's start with Will. Will, what have you got for plugs this week?
Oh my goodness. It was a pretty good release weekend stretch. There's a lot of good films hitting right now. One that I absolutely adored that is out in theaters right now. You can go watch it, and you should go watch it. Maybe if this is your type of movie. Is Spencer. The new movie by Pablo Larraín. He's the guy that directed Jackie with Natalie Portman a few years ago. And this is the story about Princess Diana, specifically on it's a biopic, but it's not one of those womb to tomb style biopics that tells the entire person's life. It is really just set on one weekend. It just tells her story over the course of Christmas weekend, when sort of at the point where she's most questioning her marriage to Prince Charles. It's an intense film that really deals with the mental effects on being kind of both gaslit and also sort of having power loomed over you by this more powerful family that you've married into that Diana experiences here. Kristen Stewart is one of the best actresses of her generation, and she gets to really show it here. She disappears into this role at times where I'm just watching going like, oh yeah, that's right, that's Kristen Stewart. It's a lot of other great people. We love Sally Hawkins. She's in this in a really good role. Timothy Spall knocks it out of the park. Just everything about this movie is so damn good. I strongly recommend this one. I think there's some people that I've heard a couple of people say that they only want to see a Princess Diana movie that's like a more traditional biopic that's about her like overcoming adversity over the course of her life. I think this is a more tragic version of that same story. Not saying that it ends tragically or anything like that, but just it deals with a very tumultuous time in her life, and so she goes to the ringer for that. So it may not be for everyone, but holy shit, this is a well acted, well made, just top notch film. I strongly recommend it. It's called Spencer.
K-Stew.
K-Stew. And Brad, I know you were a fan of Jackie, right?
I love Jackie.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jackie was great. Yeah.
I watching this one was like, I think Brad would like this.
Well, we'll have to see. I'm sure we're going to see it at some point soon, babe. So
Good. Yeah. It'd be on my list, I think, definitely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. Very cool. Well, Will, thank you so much. Jim, what have you got this week?
My choice is also a movie that's currently in theaters. Unfortunately, not on streaming, as far as I know. This movie is called Belfast, and it's a Kenneth Branagh written and directed movie, which is about it's semi-autobiographical in that Kenneth Branagh grew up in Belfast during the time of what they call the Troubles in Northern Ireland, between the Protestants and the Catholics. However, this movie is not necessarily about the Troubles. This is a movie about a family that's dealing with the effects of the Troubles, and specifically a young boy who's about 9 years old in this movie. The movie takes place in 1969. That boy, I think, being kind of a stand-in, if you will, for Kenneth Branagh when he was a boy and how he was experiencing it. And it's both a coming-of-age movie, kind of a family drama, as well as just a kind of a historical reference point for people who may not have realized kind of the full impact of the people in Northern Ireland at that time when those things were going on for like 30 years, from like 69 to 98 or something like that, when there was a treaty. This film is fantastic. I had tweeted that it might be the best movie of the year. I haven't seen a lot of movies. I haven't seen Spencer. I'm sure there's some Oscar contenders coming up, but I think this one's going to be talked about quite a bit. The cast in this is actually great. Look at Jamie Dornan, who we reviewed. Did we review the 50 Shades movies at one point?
We did.
Right.
Yeah.
Christian Grey from the 50 Shades movie. Who knew? He's fantastic in this. A discovery of a young actor, Jude Hill, which is amazing. This movie is filmed mostly in black and white, and I know that's going to turn a lot of people off. But the cinematography is fantastic. I mean, this is a character-driven movie, but the cinematography of some of the terror scenes, as well as some of the dramatic moments, is just great. So, I can't recommend this strongly enough. See Belfast. It's probably we're probably going to end up talking about it at the end of the year, I think.
Jim, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this one yet. Unfortunately, the screenings for it happened about the time I was getting proposed to, and so I chose that over Belfast, and I need to catch up with it. But
well, you made the right choice, even though this is a really great movie.
Thank you. But with Kenneth Branagh, I want to know, was this like emotional whiplash for you? Because I think that it's possible that this is your number one film of this year, and it's also possible that Kenneth Branagh made maybe your number, like whatever your last place film was of last year. He was the Artemis Fowl. He directed Artemis Fowl. Was that whiplash for you?
I don't understand. Like it's definitely emotional whiplash. I don't understand how something this beautiful could come out of the same creator as something so gross as Artemis Fowl was. It just doesn't make sense.
It's all about why, like, it's great when creators have like the freedom to make, in addition to like their big paycheck movies, just these smaller films that are more personal to them and get those out.
That's right. I think this movie came from a place inside him rather than, no, here's a fucking, best-selling fantasy novel that you need to make into a fucking movie. I think this is, something that came from a special place in him, and therefore that reflected on the film. But it's great.
All right. Excellent. Well, babe, thank you so much for sharing your plug. Mine, I'll just be really brief with this because there's not a lot to talk about yet. But Michael C. Hall is back as Dexter, the serial killer with a heart of gold in Dexter New Blood, which is a limited series. I don't know if there's going to be like multiple seasons of this. It sounds like maybe it's just going to be the one. But for people who were maybe not super happy about how Dexter wrapped up back in 2000 and whatever it was, Dexter is back. Jennifer Carpenter is back as Deb, although in an interesting way. And we're getting to see what's happened to Dexter in the 10 years since the original show went off the air, what Dexter's been up to, his past and his present colliding. There's some really good stuff happening in the show so far. Only 2 episodes are out at this point, but I'm very, very much just jazzed to have Dexter back. And that's saying something because we actually binged Dexter over the last year of quarantine. That was one of our shows, and I had never seen it before. We ended Dexter in September, so like a month and a half before the new show came out. And
cool.
I really missed it. I really, like, after watching Dexter, 1 or 2 episodes a night every night for 6 months or whatever, it left a hole. So, for me, having just finished the series a few months ago and now getting a new season, it's magical. It's awesome. I can only imagine what it's like for people who watched Dexter all the way through back in the day, and they've been waiting 10 years for this. If you go on Reddit, people are just losing their shit with every episode, like so blissed out and happy out of their minds to have this show back. So all of that to say, I'm enjoying it a lot. If you haven't seen Dexter yet, it's available on Showtime. You can get a 30-day free trial of Showtime. Binge all of Dexter. It is possible. And then watch the first few episodes of Dexter New Blood. See if you like it before you have to pay any money to Showtime. So I'll just put that out there. It's definitely worth the time, I think.
I can't imagine what it'd be like to binge like 7 seasons of a show like in a month. Like that's incredibly intense. Like that would be insane. I don't think I've ever done it or anything even close to that. But I know that people probably have done it. I just can't imagine what it'd be like.
Well, different strokes for different folks. I would just posit that the amount of movies, babe, that you watch every week per month, I wonder how it would equate to like hours of a TV show.
2 episodes a movie, I guess.
Yeah. How many movies would you say you probably watch a month?
A month? 10 to 12.
10 to 12.
Yeah.
So that's like 2 seasons of Dexter.
In a month. Yeah. But you're talking about 7 seasons.
I know. Like I'm just saying
2 or 3 seasons, but 7. But you know what? It's doable. It's doable.
It'd be like
totally doable.
It would be like a month-long film festival, basically. That's
there you go.
Like. Yeah.
We're going to have to find a time, like, okay, legit. We need to find a time where, like, we know there's not going to be a movie coming out for the next 2 weeks that we want to watch. Like, let's talk, like, fucking like April or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And we need to find a show that none of us has watched and just stream a whole season and just do a review of a whole season of some show that we've all watched and binged in that 2-week period. I don't know what that's going to be, but I think we should do that.
That could be interesting. That could be fun.
I don't know. I haven't started Succession yet. Maybe we could do Succession.
I
Everyone's
haven't
telling
either.
me I need to watch Succession.
I've been wanting to watch it really bad. We just haven't fit it in yet. So, yeah. But anyway, Dexter New Blood, it's on Showtime right now. First 2 episodes are already available. Check it out. Hope you like it. All right, fellas. Well, as we look to wrap this thing up for this week, heading into next week when we'll be talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife, I'm looking forward to seeing that, chatting about that with you guys. Where can folks chat with us between now and our Ghostbusters Afterlife show? Jim, go.
Yes, you can chat with me and find me on Twitter. And my handle there is at JJP Out West, all one word. And you can also find me, of course, on Facebook, the Book of Faces, where I am just myself, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Excellent. And Will, how about for you?
Let's see. Twitter, Instagram, I am at Whatever Cove. Facebook, find me, William Lindis. Send me a message first so I know who you are. Letterboxd.com, search for William Lindis if you want to see my film reviews on there. And if you're on TikTok, I'm doing a lot more on TikTok and showing my chest off a lot on TikTok because, thirst traps. So check out at the Movie Bear there. So yay, socials.
All right. Awesome. Jim, are you trying to scare Jordy?
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. It's behind him. He doesn't see it.
Poor thing. He's about to. You're going to boop him on the head, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I wouldn't be that mean.
Well, as we wait for calamity to happen on Jim's desk, because our new kitten is afraid of a stuffed animal, that's what's going on for those who can't see. You can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub Chaser Bear friends in common with you. You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro. Also, just a note to Angel, who unfortunately did not get in early on in the show. Angel said Finch was really good, and he's sorry that he missed the podcast. But Angel, you're with us here in spirit.
Yeah,
So,
Angel. Hey, Angel.
if you come back to watch, maybe you'll hear this. All right, everybody. We will see you next time for Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Ooh, don't cross the streams.
I was going to say it could be our Halloween episode, but like Halloween has already happened, and I don't know why Ghostbusters came out after Halloween, but okay.
Because it's Afterlife. I don't.
Because it's a Christmas movie, obviously. Come on.
Slimer learns the true
bells.
meaning of Christmas. All right, everybody. We'll see you all next time. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.